You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. I feel like we have to kick off the show with like an in memoriam. Because remember when we had the White Sox kill list and we're like, a lot of guys are going to get shredded off of this team? Like, guys are going to be leaving the 40-man roster left and right?
Dude, it happened. It happened, yes. Like, they got done with Thanksgiving, and they're like, happy Thanksgiving, you're out of here.
We had polled people all across social media, Sox fans, and had them tell us if they had to find just four guys to get off the roster. We knew there were going to be a lot more. Remember, we were predicting well into the teens the amount of guys that were going to be jettisoned from this team, and that's going to happen. We knew this was going to happen. And remember the top four guys: Dylan Covey, Yolmer Sanchez, Thaigo Vieira, and Daniel Palka.
Right.
Palka went right away.
Yes.
He's gone. Sanchez was outrighted last week. It became official yesterday, on Monday.
It was Monday. Yeah. They released a story that he's been put on outright waivers.
Yeah, Monday he was non-tendered. We already knew what was going to happen with him. He's gone. And Thaigo Vieira was released and signed with a Japanese baseball league. He's not even in the country anymore. He's gone to play baseball someplace else. Dylan Covey, who was the number one guy that Sox fans wanted to see go bye-bye, still hanging on.
Yes.
Like, he's got incriminating photos of somebody.
Only because, Chris, they did not sign Zach Wheeler over the Thanksgiving holiday, unfortunately, which is kind of what we were thinking was going to happen.
Yeah,
so they still have, here's the deal, they still have pitching to fill. So that's why I think they haven't jettisoned Covey yet. In addition to the Yolmer move, what came out on Monday, they made the same decision to put on waivers pitchers Ryan Burr and Caleb Frere. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
That's how you say it?
Yeah, Caleb Frere. He gone.
They have tendered contracts to unsigned players Alex Colome, Evan Marshall, Leury Garcia, and Carlos Rodon. We all sort of expected that. Chris, when you and I were texting the other day, we said, well, maybe Colome, but apparently they're working on something with him. So,
well, I mean, they're going to tender him, and here's the interesting thing. The expected, according to MLB trade rumors, the expected amount of money these guys will all end up getting in arbitration. Colome's $10.3 million, Garcia's $4 million, Rodon is $4.5 million, Evan Marshall's $1.3 million. I thought the most interesting thing, though, that happened on Monday when they had to figure out who they were going to tender and who they were going to non-tender was that James McCann avoids arbitration with a $5.4 million deal for 1 year.
I did see that also.
He was only projected, though, by MLB trade rumors to get $4.9 million.
So $500,000
$500,000. Where did that $500,000 come from? Is that the $500,000 they saved on Wellington Castillo?
It's maybe.
Is that where that $500,000 came from?
You might be right.
So what they did to avoid arbitration with McCann was
we're just going to
give and some international signing bonus pool money just so they could lock him up before arbitration because they were afraid he was going to make more. Like, it's the one thing that, like, I looked at it, I was like, that's exactly $500,000. That's exactly what the Wellington Castillo.
Listen.
Like, McCann got the Castillo money. Is that how that works?
If you're going to give James McCann the Castillo money, first of all, fine. But if
you gave him international signing pool money just so you could lock up McCann rather than go to arbitration where he was projected to make $500,000 less. I'm just spitball. Maybe not. They're probably not related at all. They're not related at all.
Well,
but in the grand scheme of things,
in the grand scheme of things,
it just popped out.
You needed to. In the grand scheme of things, I mean, it's not that far off of what they were projecting his arbitration numbers to be. I can see why the White Sox would want to go ahead and do that and not risk him going to arbitration in case, for whatever reason, he ends up getting some insane amount of money.
I think if you can lock
based off of his All-Star year and his performance in the first half of last year. So I get that.
I think if you can lock a guy in when you have so many things you have to do in an offseason, that's a good thing. It also makes it easier for the White Sox, and I hate to suggest this because I don't believe they're going to do it, but it gives the White Sox the option if somebody comes along and tries to go after James McCann that he's already locked into a contract for next year.
Yeah.
If somebody comes a calling, and the Sox may have noticed that. Let's just look at what's going on in the free agent market. Like pretty much nothing unless you're a catcher. Catchers are going everywhere. After the Sox go out and get Grandal, everybody starts trying to grab up catchers. Okay, several teams have gone out and gotten free agent catchers and signed them.
It's encouraging, more than interesting, that the White Sox were actually the first to move on the catcher situation. My question is, did they realize that this catcher free-for-all was going to happen in free agency, or did they set the market by going to get Grandal first?
I almost feel like it's like when you're playing fantasy football, which I know you don't do, but like in a fantasy football draft, there's like that one good tight end out there. You know you need a tight end. Everybody needs one when you're doing a fantasy football draft, and you don't want to be the guy that ends up with the 10th best tight end.
Well,
so when the big guy went, there was a tight end run. Like all of a sudden, everybody's like, we got to go get that guy because you know what? We need a catcher. That's what it felt like to me.
In fantasy hockey, which I have played, we do play, goalies are kind of the same way.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of like that with the goalies.
I went with fantasy football because 95% of America plays fantasy football, and you and a couple of your buddies play fantasy hockey. So I just was trying to relate to everybody out there, instead of like a couple of guys who play fantasy hockey. And nobody cares.
For people who actually want to do something that not everybody else does. Plus, I don't like football. You know this.
We have McCann signed. We have guys tendered that we expected to see get tendered. Leuri's back. Colome's back. Rodon's back. Marshall's back. Okay, 4 guys are gone. Burr, Frere, Sanchez, Vieira. The roster's at 36 out of 40 on the 40-man roster. The White Sox have told us that they want 2 starting pitchers, a DH, and a right fielder. They said this, Rick Hahn said this out loud in front of cameras multiple times as the season ended. You could say Grandal is really that DH with the way that they're going to rotate their catchers and their DH, and possibly every once in a while move Collins to first base if you want to give Abreu a day off. Like, they've got that done, so cross DH off. The problem the White Sox are now having is that where they were able to attack and sign Grandal before the rest of the league caught up, they have run into an issue with their next move, which seemed to be their front-end, high-end starting pitcher. Because they're going to get a high-end guy, we said, and they're going to get a guy that's for the back of the rotation. The high-end guy target seems to be Zach Wheeler. The issue with Zach Wheeler, and I said this, if they don't sign him by over the Thanksgiving weekend, I'm afraid they're not going to sign him. I don't think the Sox now should feel super positive about getting him. And I just want to, here's what's happened. The Sox get reported as being the team that has the highest amount offered on the table for Wheeler, the best deal.
And this has gone back now to before the Thanksgiving holiday.
Right.
Like right around the Grandal deal, that's when we were reading this.
So Ken Rosenthal just writes an article for The Athletic the other day saying there's one team that's already got a $100 million offer on the table. You would assume that's the Chicago White Sox. You would also assume that the White Sox have basically come out with what they're going. Can you imagine them going higher than that? Rosenthal's talking 4 to 5 years at $100 million for Zach Wheeler. Do you see them adding years or money onto that? That's a tough sell to your owner if that's all the case. And now here's the other interesting thing. It gets reported that Wheeler's going to go back to the Mets. We talked about this, but obviously the Mets said, yeah, we're not going to match that. So now Wheeler's agent, he's got nothing. It's either accept it or keep going. Well, look, everybody's talking about Wheeler. You even have the Yankees saying that if they can't get Cole or Strasburg, they're going to go after Wheeler. He's not in a hurry to sign.
No,
the agency that's representing Wheeler now realizes they have the 3rd best pitcher behind Cole and Strasburg, and there are more teams out there that are interested in Wheeler, so they're playing the long game now to the point that they get it put out there that the Twins are interested in Wheeler, but then 2 days after that, it's reported the Twins haven't even offered a deal, which means the agent is now playing the same game that we saw with the Machado and the Harper camp last year, and we've seen this game before, and I don't think the White Sox play this game very well.
No, and to add to that, they're waiting for the Strasburg Cole dominoes to fall first, because what Wheeler is going to get is going to be dependent upon what those two guys get, and those two guys are going to be the ones to go first. So I can totally see Wheeler's camp saying, you know what? Cool, $100 million, 4 or 5 years from the White Sox, but I want to see what Cole gets. I want to see what Strasburg gets. And you're right, because you could end up with a situation like you had last year, where the Sox end up being odd man out.
And I know what we're saying, Dave, is very different from what White Sox Twitter was abuzz with all day on Tuesday. Because if you look at White Sox Twitter on Tuesday, and you look at everybody from John Heyman to Bob Nightingale to any reporter, I think Jeff Passan had something out there, everybody's got something saying the White Sox are in the lead, Zach Wheeler's making his decision soon, but then there's always this caveat. The Reds are close. The Rangers are trying. It feels like we're getting set up for either disappointment in the next week or like 2 months of just hanging on this Wheeler thing. There is an insane amount of smoke around this thing. Steve Stone is chirping on Twitter yesterday. Think the next target's pitching, kind of alluding to the fact that the Sox are getting close. I think Stoney's deal to join Benetti back up in the booth gets done before this is resolved. I think the Sox have a better shot at acquiring Jock Peterson in a trade, which once again is the buzz, before this gets worked out. No matter what is getting put out there about this is going to happen soon, get ready. I hope I'm wrong. I hope to be doing a special extra show of Sox in the Basement this weekend because we've made another major signing. I'm not super confident, though, right now, like most people are. They tried to do the same thing with Wheeler that they did with Grandal. I give them complete credit for that.
No, they tried to get it right away. They tried to get him right away.
They have reportedly the best offer that's out there. But I'm of the feeling that it's stupid to get into a bidding war now where you're going to sit around and wait until February to find out if you're going to get Zach Wheeler.
No, and here's why.
I think you need to turn your attention to guys like Ryu and guys like Madison Bumgarner.
That's what I'm saying. There are a bunch of guys, Chris. Like when you look over MLB free agency and you see all of the starting pitchers that are available, there are plenty of dudes on that list that if you saw in a White Sox uniform and you put them at the top of your rotation, you'd sit there and you'd feel okay. You'd feel pretty good about going into next year.
No, I think it's dumb to get into a long-term thing. Now, some people think I'm crazy to say that's it. They should move on. And you know, it's a knee-jerk reaction. You don't just leave the table and stop talking to Wheeler's camp. But you just can't sit there with that offer on the table now for the next month and hope it's going to be okay with tunnel vision while the other options that are around him disappear. If everybody's focusing on, I mean, look, according to Ken Rosenthal recently, it's the White Sox, the Twins, the Reds, the Rangers, and the Blue Jays among the clubs pursuing them. And I've seen teams like the Astros talk about him. Okay, right. I've seen teams, and the only reason the Astros are holding off right now on doing anything is because they don't know what Major League Baseball is going to do to them, but it's going to be something really bad for cheating at baseball. So they don't know if they can even field a team next year, because if Major League Baseball comes out and says everybody we think that was stealing signs is suspended for 50 games, they're going to be like, well, we're just not doing anything this offseason. It's a lost season. You don't know what they're going to end up doing. So they're not. But
or it could be massive fines.
Right,
I mean, they don't know.
They have to. So they're still waiting in the wind. And then you also have teams like the Angels, who I know are in on Garrett Cole, but also will be after Wheeler if they can't get him. The Nationals, they don't get Strasburg, but they decide they want to keep going. They may be knocking on Wheeler's door. The Yankees. You have those
I've heard the Padres too. So
you have those two premier pitchers that are above him. And if he's slotted now at number 3 because of all this interest, and everybody always gets excited about the shiny thing. He's become the shiny thing. And yes, the Sox are in the lead right now, but there's no reason why you shouldn't be knocking on Madison Bumgarner's door right now. If Madison Bumgarner is willing to take a deal close to what you're offering Zach Wheeler, I say you do it. You could probably sign him for a year less because of the advanced innings, and he won't be asking you for very much more. You could overpay slightly on him. I mean, I know everybody sits there and says that he's old. He's only 9 months or 10 months older than Zach Wheeler. I know everybody says that he's worn out because of all the playoff innings. Those are spectacular playoff innings. Like, his playoff stats are absolutely incredible. I mean, like, you know, you can sit there and you can say, well, you know, Zach Wheeler's got all the pluses going for him. This is a really interesting narrative because I'm looking at Zach Wheeler's, let's look at his ERA plus. That's your ERA adjusted to your park and your league. This is something that Rosenthal uses when he's starting to compare players in his article that came out this week for The Athletic. Now, even though he's thrown nearly 1,000 fewer innings than Madison Bumgarner, who is only 10 months older, okay, so that's where it is, okay? And he's an analytics darling. He has an ERA plus that's basically right at league average. A guy who recently was also the same thing, and this is what Rosenthal compares him to, a guy who everybody felt the same way about recently was Yu Darvish, who actually had a better ERA plus and actually looked like analytically he was about to have his best years. And teams fought over Yu Darvish and gave him a bunch of money. There's no guarantee that Zach Wheeler is going to be what you expect Zach Wheeler to be. Now, do I think he could be? Yes, I'm all in. If they sign him tomorrow, I'm all excited about it. But let's talk about a guy like Madison Bumgarner. Here's a guy who his worst ERA plus ever was last season, and it was still better than Zach Wheeler's. He's better in his worst seasons. He's better than Zach Wheeler. Rosenthal goes on to point out that there are people that believe that just a little bit of tweaking analytically could get him back into that form that he was in just a few years ago, that his spin rate is increasing coming out of his hand, the ball coming out of his hand. There are things that point to the fact that Bumgarner still has good years in front of him. He's got rings. He's got experience.
He's only 30.
He's only 30. If Zach Wheeler intends to hold you out until next year, I have no problem with you going and signing Bumgarner to a similar deal and saying, you know what, Madison, we just want to get you right now. We want to get this done. Because you don't want to sit here with all these teams again, just like you did last year, and fight over the bell of the ball. Because I don't know if you're going to get the bell of the ball. We're not that destination. We're the White Sox. We're not the destination where the free agent goes, well, I've got 3 offers and they're pretty much the same, and I've always wanted to play for the White Sox my entire life.
Yeah,
I can't wait to get there. What an amazing place to play. We're just not that. A neighborhood bar, a Southside tradition, your home base for Sox viewing parties. Cork and Kerry at the Park. 3258 South Princeton Avenue, where they have an incredible menu that includes award-winning burgers, Chicago favorites, wings, beef, pulled pork, mac and cheese, salads, wraps, nachos, and an incredible environment. When I'm getting a drink pregame or postgame, it's over at Cork and Kerry at the Park. And in case you didn't know, you can rent the entire bar out for events. That applies not only to Cork and Kerry at the Park, but you can also book parties this holiday season at the original Cork and Kerry in Beverly. Go to corkandkerryatthepark.com or corkandkerrybeverly.com for more details. Cork and Kerry at the Park, at the corner of 33rd and Princeton, right near the park. We'll see you there.
Getting back to the Grandal signing, don't think for a minute that signing didn't have at least something to do with trying to lure top starting pitchers here. Because remember, one of the things that we talked about with Grandal that is so awesome is his pitch framing. I think that's probably part of their pitch too, isn't it? I mean,
it is a pitch, but money talks.
Well, yeah,
money talks. And I believe, looking at this situation, you have an agent that's got an offer on the table that's bigger than they ever expected to have when they walked into this.
From the Sox.
Nobody was expecting Zach Wheeler to pull the money if there was already $100 million deal out there. And now you have an agent that's like, holy cow, we're sought after. Let's all slow down. And that's what that agency is doing. And I don't want to wait 2 months and lose. There's too much to be done. We still got to get that other pitcher. We still got to get that right fielder. Right fielder thing is going to take forever. If you really have locked in on Nick Castellanos and you're really going to dance with Scott Boras again, that right field thing is going to take forever.
Please no.
Please don't get into January and be like, well, we got Grandal. Please don't do that to me. I can't handle that because, I want to have all the faith in the world. I do. And we are lucky enough now to have Steve Parodzinski, who's written for a lot of different publications on the White Sox, who now writes for SoxInTheBasement.com, and he's been putting up stuff weekly, and I really appreciate that, and go check it out. But he and you, if I got the two of you together, a negative vortex could open up. So I'm trying to be as positive as possible. because he's already like, oh, well, we got Grandal, and they'll probably not get anybody else. Like, and I don't want to, and I don't think that's what they want to do. But you might get forced into a situation now where you end up with things you didn't want.
Okay, but here's the thing: when it comes to the one thing to not worry about is the bottom end rotation guy, because there are plenty of guys out there that can fill that role just fine.
The corporate podcast is pushing Cole Hamels this week.
Oh, they're doing the Cole Hamels.
Cole Hamels being pushed.
Dude, you know what, man? Hamels would be fine.
He'd be fine.
Bottom of the end.
Not more than a year.
Gio Gonzalez.
A year with a year option.
Give me Gio Gonzalez for a year with an option. Give me Dick Mountain for a year.
No. Dick Mountain had surgery. Isn't even going to be ready for the start of the year.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, Rich Hills. I cross him off your list because you need a guy who's ready when the year starts.
No, but I think that bottom end guy is not going to be hard to find.
I want it to be Alex Wood. I'm still on the Alex Wood train because you can take Alex Wood and you can move him into the bullpen when your guys are ready to actually pitch at the major league level.
Yeah, so
you know you're going to manipulate Kopech and he's not going to be on the opening day roster.
So look, man, don't worry about starting pitching bottom end. All right. Yes, that's something they have to fill, but that's something that you can fill pretty easily, I think. Definitely worry about the front end starting pitching. I don't know, man. Castellanos, is that really where they're going? I mean, are they really going to do the Boris thing? And even do they see what you saw where Castellanos's home runs don't project that well at US Cellular Field?
I love how we never get the name of the field right.
Because, dude, I'm sorry. I am not calling it Guaranteed Rate Field. That is stupid.
I just got to go back to what my grandmother used to call it. Sox Park.
Sox Park.
All right, so that's when it was Comiskey. She called it Sox Park. Okay.
They used to call it Comiskey because people can't pronounce Comiskey properly.
All right, so there's a lot of guys out there right now at right field. And so the White Sox could sit back. They really could. There's a lot of options that you can go get. There's a lot of things that you can figure out in right field. And for the first time, I think, ever, I noted in the last couple of years, it's a huge number, 40 players that were up for arbitration were non-tendered in Major League Baseball on Monday. That's almost double the year before. And the owners have figured out, and this is why when the CBA ends in December of 2021, we may be heading for a labor stoppage, which scares the bejesus out of me because it's going to be just like 1994
right,
all over
we're supposed
again.
to win, but
we're going to be ready to win, and all of a sudden, we'll be striking or locking out or whatever it is. But
and you know who's going to be at the head of that?
Right at the head of it.
Yeah.
Jerry will be standing there right there leading the owners. That's what he'll be doing.
Yeah.
That's what his role is. I look at the amount of guys that have been flooded into the market. Now what you have is the owners, and the owners know what they're doing. Why spend all that money in arbitration on a guy if the market is flooded? Now we're going to drive down the cost of players. And they have to do that. Did you see what Mike Moustakas got? Like $64 million over 4 years? What? Josh Donaldson must have done a dance in his living room after that happened.
I didn't see where that happened.
He must have done a dance in his living room when the Cincinnati Reds gave Moustakas that.
Wow.
Because he is going to get so much more. In right field right now, you have so many options you can use. And there's guys that are available through trade as well. We've talked about the names. Marcelo Zuna, Corey Dickerson is out there. Those are two guys that we like. Domingo Santana is 27 years old. He was a replacement level player, but he's had some interesting years where he's been good, been bad. He was a non-tendered guy on Monday. Nicholas Castellanos, like I said, Cole Calhoun's going to be out there. I don't want to have Haseel Garcia back, but there are teams that are interested in him, so he's going to grab one of the roles. Yasiel Puig is out there, right? And then you also have the very intriguing idea that I've seen floated, and I got tagged in it by some Pirates fans that were talking about the idea of acquiring one of the White Sox many catchers. Even all the way down to Yerman Mercedes.
Interesting.
Is part of a package deal to go and grab up a Starling Marte. Who you have 2 years of control at about $11 million, and it's an option year every year, so you can get rid of him right away. Like it's just option years you just get to pick up. It's like pay as you go, but you have control over him. And when you think about Eloy Jimenez, and Eloy is not very good defensively out in left field. And I love the thing that has been talked about, how he's now playing, down south. He's playing some winter ball. The first day he was in the lineup, he was a DH. Like, I thought he was down there to work on his defense. He's down there being a DH right away.
The story has been put out, whether it's true or not, that the White Sox have been satisfied with Eloy Jimenez's defensive progress. He's been bad out there in left field, yes, but
he looks lost.
The narrative is that he's getting better. Now,
but are you going to take Luis Robert when he eventually gets up, have him acclimate to the majors, and also have to have him cover that entire alley between center and left because Eloy can't? If you went out and made a deal, just theoretically, I'm not saying you should, but if you made a deal or signed a guy who could play center field, you could take some pressure off of Luis Robert as he gets acclimated. You have the ability to flip-flop him back and forth, but you could also shift your outfielders because you got two guys that can cover a lot of ground that are out there in right and in center. So it is something to consider. It's another outside-the-box thing. Remember, I was like Didi Gregorius, right field. I mean, I don't think Marte is as outside the box as that. Would you make that move? If all of a sudden, like, let's say they came along and they said, we want James McCann just as like a bridge because we like him. Or they wanted Zach Collins.
Oh, no, yeah.
Would you include either one of those guys in a deal for a couple years of Starling Marte?
Yeah, I would.
You would.
McCann, I don't know.
McCann is the guy I would let go of more than Collins.
Well,
because I still don't know what Collins' potential is.
You only have him for a year.
Yeah, you're not keeping him, I don't think, after this year. I really don't think you keep James McCann after this year. He's really a one-year deal.
So you trade 1 year of McCann for 2 years of Marte?
Well, you're going to have to give up other things. You're going to have to probably throw in a Steele Walker. You're going to have to give them prospects that they want.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, I did. Okay.
You wouldn't like orchestrate. I mean, like, that's the thing.
I'd be fine with it.
To me, it's an interesting trade. There'd be half the room yelling that I can't believe we did this, and there'd be another half of the room saying, "Great,
makes sense
to me." So, but I'm sure it's somewhere down their list as a possibility. But again, they're right now stuck in this thing where they are tunnel vision right on that front end starting pitcher. And I don't want them to have tunnel vision just on the one guy. It's my biggest fear. Just don't have tunnel vision get locked in for the next 2 months in the middle of the Zach Wheeler sweepstakes, because if you don't get him, you're going to be left holding the bag. And we can't do that this year.
In the White Sox defense, and you have said this, they have been a lot better this year about keeping what they are intending on doing under wraps.
Yeah, like except for the fact they're the highest offer for Zach Wheeler.
Except for the fact that highest offer for Zach Wheeler.
That came from the agent.
Right. No, because, for example, the Grandal thing came out of nowhere. I think it was like James Fox predicted it, and that was it. And nobody else even paid it any mind. But then all of a sudden, there we are. I will give the Sox the benefit of the doubt that what they intend on doing or where they're at is very much, they're doing a better job of keeping it in-house under wraps this time around.
Well, but look at this too. Why does the Grandal thing not get plastered all over the place? Because Yasmani Grandal is kind of his own guy. Here's a guy who took a 1-year deal because he felt his value was worth more. I think he's far more involved in what's going on with his contracts and his money. He's one of these new players that understands his market value and is almost giving his agent instructions. So the agent probably was like, well, I really can't. He doesn't want me to drum up anymore. He's happy with the deal he wants to sign.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But I think you run into a problem when you have a player go, just get me the best deal. I'll be on vacation. Okay, I'll be with my family. I'll be doing such and such. I'll be working out. That's your job. Get me the best deal. Then that agent is doing things like what's happening here. It's clear that they are the ones that put that out now. When you hear that the Twins hadn't even made an offer, but it was out 2 days or 3 days before that was revealed that the Twins were in on him, they're trying to drum up a market bigger than what they already are getting. And the guy's already at 9 figures, according to Rosenthal on Monday. He's already at 9 figures. He's already getting a 9-figure deal, and he isn't signing today.
Right.
That's a guy who's like, they're in for the long haul. They're going to sit around and wait forever. They're like, that 9 figures isn't going away. That's how they feel. And so they're not afraid right now. So you can't be afraid to pick up the phone and be like, all right, well, right now, the same article by Ken Rosenthal, and I know I'm kind of harping on the same article here, but it was really, it really kind of compared two pitchers that we've talked about a lot in Bumgarner and Wheeler. He's not, the predictions for Bumgarner are not 9 figures.
Right.
The years for Bumgarner are less than Wheeler's.
The hope is that what I was getting at, what the hope is that in addition to having that contract on the table for Wheeler, that the Sox are behind closed doors making calls to Ryu, to Bumgarner. I can never say his name right. It's terrible, Chris. But that they're making calls to some of these other guys in case Wheeler falls off the table, or in case they just decide, you know what? This guy will sign today. So
that's what they have to do.
We're not gonna wait on Zach Wheeler.
You can't sit around and wait on that guy forever. You can't. I really feel like in my bones, my gut tells me this is going to stretch forever, the Wheeler thing. That everybody wants it to happen, but it's not going to happen. Then again, it could happen 5 hours after this podcast post, which would be nice. I would like to be wrong. If I'm wrong and that happens, and you want to make fun of me jubilantly, remember, you can call us at 708-459-8406. You can comment on the show. You can jump in and tell us what you think the White Sox should be doing. Dave and I will be here. If something happens, we will break in and do a special episode over the weekend. We don't care. We're all in on this. Find us on all your social media channels at Sox in the Basement, and tell your friends about it and get them to subscribe anywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.